Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors, the place where we not only talk about the 2A, we talk about America first, we talk about a general direction on how we're going to fight tyranny and pass freedom on to the next generation. And this episode is not going to disappoint in that direction. So, if you guys are down for one of the best judicial opinions you've heard in a long time about the unconstitutionality of insane gun control regimes from Illinois, you're going to love this episode. Everything will be linked in the description box below. This ruling by itself is fire. And you need to send this one out to everyone that you know. And of course, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on if those descriptors seem to fit the needs of your YouTube viewing pleasures. All right, people. Before we dive right into this, I got to say a quick word about our sponsor who made the entire thing possible, Patriot Mobile. Guys, if you are looking for something that's going to take your cellular experience or your mobile dealer to the next level, Patriot Mobile has integrated new technology, new abilities, and you're the direct beneficiary. It's no longer the top 3 on the totem pole. You know which ones I'm talking about. Yeah, we can use all the towers through Patriot Mobile. You call them up, they actually run an analysis of which of the big 3's towers are the strongest, and they actually put you on whichever one works because they can access all 3. And if you move, you can do the exact same thing again. They can buy you out of your contracts for your existing phones. They can set you up on whatever plan you really need for your custom design, and they actually put their money towards causes that are pro-2A and pro-freedom versus the other guys who are funding all the bad crap, very similar to the government has been doing for years now. Patriot Mobile, guys. Link in the description box below. Let's get into this because this opinion is absolute fire. And of course, everything I'm going to show you is on my Twitter or my X account. It's at BradenLOA. If you guys missed the Canadian versus USA war that broke out in my comments today, you missed a thing because it was awesome because apparently Canada's preparing for war with us. Check it out at BradenLOA. It's a blast. All right. So, I'll give a little nod to my friends over the National Association for Gun Rights who sent this out today. This is a Southern Illinois judge who was spitting fire with this opinion. Now, this is a 2A opinion, and it basically smacks the crap out of FOID, or firearm owner identification cards. Because, let's face it, it's a permission slip from the government to have rights that are already yours. They just put it behind another, velvet rope, of which they unlock after you pay more fees and jump through more hoops, which, of course, is unconstitutional, which explains this ruling's unconstitutionality. However, there are some things that I want to cover in here because the story is not, is this going to run nationally and make everything unconstitutional? That's not the story here. What the story is what the judge actually said. And that's what I want to dive into. This is glorious. So let's go with what National Gun Rights highlighted, then I'll show you the actual decision. There's one more thing I wanted to hit, but let's get it. More than a few examples of judges behind enemy lines in that state declaring war against the ever-expanding local gun control regime. I'm just going to read this. Again, it will all be linked per usual. I always bring receipts. Amendments are law-abiding, responsible citizens. I'm just wrapping it up. The state argues that the defendant is not protected by the Second Amendment because she is not a law-abiding, responsible citizen. The state reasoned that because the defendant failed to apply for and obtain a FOID card and possessed a firearm, she is not a law-abiding and thus falls outside the protection of the Second Amendment. So let's stop that for a second. So because she did not abide by the draconian gun control regime's laws that are put in place that infringe upon her rights, she's therefore effectively a felon or a criminal. So therefore, she doesn't actually apply for the Second Amendment. That's what they're saying. They're saying she's outside of the people as determined in the people, right? That's what they're articulating at the state of Illinois level. Let's continue. That reasoning would exclude every person who fails or refuses to comply with even the most draconian gun legislation from challenging its constitutionality because they would no longer be considered law-abiding citizens. That's what I just said. They would be considered to fall outside the scope of the group of people protected by the Second Amendment. This would open the floodgates for the government to pass the most restrictive gun laws while severely limiting the number of people who could challenge them. Such reasoning is a fatally flawed attempt to make everyone criminals who refuses to bow their knee to the dictates of the government and kiss the signet ring. Such reasoning would have a chilling effect and ultimately strip them of their Second Amendment rights. Fire. Okay? And again, as I go through this, I got a few more things I want to show you. The big payoff here is not that this is going to go to the SCOTUS tomorrow and all of a sudden FOIDs are gone and all gun control laws are gone. That's not the payoff here because it's in the Illinois lower courts. You know exactly where that's going to go. It's going to get stuck in the quagmire of the bureaucratic mess that is the Illinois court system and the judicial system and the district court system. But what he's saying here is very true, and it rings very, very, very over the target. All right, so now this is an account called Freedom Steel. Judge in Southern Illinois finds the FOID unconstitutional as applied facially as well as the fees for it. So we all know that's the case. That's not the surprise here, but I want to dive into something really quickly because this is the actual document. And this video might be a little bit shorter. I don't know, we'll see where it goes. But this is something around page 4. And I'm going to read this gun analysis. And gun analysis. That's what they're arguing. But I want to show you, this is the actual documentation. I'm going to scroll up here. And I'm going to show you, this is the case. People of the state of Illinois versus Vivian Claudine Brown. Okay. As we go through this, and you can see right there, the February 10th, this is the actual file. So it's the Circuit Court of the 2nd Judicial Court. Okay. We know where that's going to go. That's not the point. Again, let me get back down to 4, the gun analysis. I'm going to read this really quickly, and you tell me if we don't got some people in some places. Listen to this. As an initial matter, the state argues that this court should not even analyze the issues before it because they have been addressed by the 1st District Court Appellate Court in the case of People v. Gunn. Specifically, it argues that this court is bound to follow Gunn as controlling precedent. The state, in so doing, the state maintains that the Gunn court has already declared the FOID Card Act constitutional. We know it's not. Alternatively, the defendant argues that Gunn's discussion of the constitutionality of the FOID Act is dicta, which basically means it's just blah, 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 whatever. To get a clearer picture, it is important to note that the issue before the court is whether the law-abiding citizen has the right to possess a firearm without a FOID card within the confines of one home. When presented in such a light, it becomes rather clear that the gun holding is dicta because that issue was never analyzed. Again, this is, do you have the right to have a gun in your own home? Does that sound familiar? Yeah, time's up. Heller decision, right? DC already went down this road. Why is this a thing? Again, you're starting to see these pieces come together. Moreover, most of the gun opinion focused on Illinois' Concealed Carry Licensing Act and not the FOID card. In fact, the gun court declined to engage in historical analysis of the FOID Act. That should perk your ears up right there. Thus, this court agrees with the defendant in that the language regarding the constitutionality of the FOID Act as set forth in Gunn is dicta. Basically, that's not important right now. Furthermore, the court finds the Gunn court's limited analysis of the FOID Act fundamentally flawed. Fundamentally flawed. Again, this is the FOID card. This is the freedom that's not the right word. Firearms owner's identification card. Okay, this is a big thing. You have to have a piece of plastic that says you have been approved to have your rights. Furthermore, this court finds the Gunn's court limited analysis of the FOID fundamentally flawed. Firstly, the Gunn court erroneously asserted that our Supreme Court has held only that the FOID Card Act does not apply within a person's home. Okay. As a matter of fact, the Gunn court cited the case at bar as precedent for its specious proclamation. To be clear, the Illinois Supreme Court has never made such a finding. Hand caught in the cookie jar. If it had, this case would have already been resolved. Moreover, with its incorrect assessment, Gunn seemingly acknowledges that the FOID Card Act doesn't apply inside the home, and if this court was to follow it, then it would be forced to follow what this court knows is an incorrect interpretation of the law. That simply cannot be the case. And here we go, where we start getting into the Bruin decision kind of touches. This is the important piece. In its perfunctory analysis of the FOID Act, I'm reading this from a distance and it's hard because I can't highlight it. The Gunn court also reasoned that because Bruin explicitly acknowledged that background checks, which are the cornerstone of the FOID Card Act, are permissible, then the FOID Card Act must be constitutional, which is a heck of a leap. After making that finding, the Gunn court determined that there was no need for us to engage in a historical analysis of firearm regulation when the Supreme Court has already done so and explicitly sanctioned the use of background checks. Again, that historical text and tradition, that Bruin decision is coming up again and again and again. That's why this is so important. It keeps on reinforcing the point that the Bruin decision is really causing the gun controllers a pain in their butt. Thus, it is this court's view that Gunn's legal analysis goes something like this. Since the Supreme Court has held that background checks are constitutional, and because background checks are the cornerstone of the FOID Card Act, then the FOID Card Act must be constitutional. End of analysis. In what universe is that a thorough and proper constitutional analysis? Remember earlier, we already had kiss the signet ring, bow the knee, and now it's in what universe does this make sense? This judge is spitting fire. Nevertheless, the state suggests that this court is bound to follow Gunn's flawed reasoning. Quite frankly, following the Gunn decision would be tantamount to judicial incompetence on the part of this court. Instead, this court has elected to follow the analysis set forth in the Bruin decision. Okay, here's why this is important. I'm going to leave it right up here so you guys can have a nice little reminder to follow me at Braden LOA. All right, this is the thing, man. When you're looking at all these judicial rulings, it's kind of like St. Benitez out in California. He's putting out fire and fire and fire. Some of the best judicial opinions we've seen in a long time have come from deep blue bastion states where there's certain judges who are so fine-tuned and so honed on that topic that they're literally printing a fireball. It's constant. It's like a printer go burr. This guy just did the exact same thing in Illinois. This is going to be referenced, just like St. Benitez's ruling is going to be referenced. This is all building in a tapestry of basically aggressing against all the gun control regimes. And as this continues and more evidence comes and more cases stack, the ball gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and the resistance of the SCOTUS or the higher courts to hold it back is getting harder and harder and harder, because the bigger the mass of cases and points that they can bring forward, the more likely it is to fall. Now that was one we're going to hit real quick. I've got another one coming later this evening, and I will see you on that one. I'm Braden. Later.